Welcome back to the Rebel's Edge. Today, we're going to be focused in on what are the catalysts for the downside move that at one point carried the Dow down over 1,100 points. Well, the catalysts are, of course, Iran, but there's more. And Justin Nugent and I are going to cover that on today's Rebel's Edge. Welcome back, folks. The one and only Justin Nugent, the engineer behind Trade Monster AI, is joining us again today, and he's right there. Pete, on the other hand, he's either interviewing for another GM job or something. I'm not sure, Justin. But I welcome you back, Justin.
Oh, I love to be here. I love it a lot. And it's such an important time, too. I mean, it's always fun to be on, but it's especially fun when there's really something going on in the market. If you want to just kick it off with macro, man, the VIX.
Let's dive right in. Macro, I'm going to say, Justin, and I didn't share this with Justin ahead of time, folks. We both know that Iran is the reason, the primary catalyst. But many of you who have traded for a long time, like Justin and like me, know that sometimes the acceleration of selling is due to something more than just the obvious. And I'm going to say, Justin, that the trading today is because of Europe. I'm going to say that Europe can't go down 3 and 4% day after day without some people raising cash over here on the other side of the pond. So should we be down, and could that 1,100 sell-off in the Dow Jones, could that have been at least partially because of the 4% sell-off we saw almost across the board in Europe? And I'm going to answer my own question. Yes. What do you got, Justin, for macro today?
Yeah, and I mean, that was also taking place in Asia, too. I think Korea opened up something like -6 or -7% last night, which is crazy. You know what I'm really looking at for the macro right now? You've got like 4,400 decliners to about 900 advancers. If you're looking at that heat map, it's just red almost no matter where you look. And I would love for this to actually be one of those big capitulation days. The statistics say that on those big, 5-to-1 or 10-to-1 down days, that's usually your local bottoms, especially if we're not even in a correction yet. That's usually enough to kind of wash out a lot of that fear and lead into some of that buying. And I will say this, I don't think we're going to end up covering it too much, but even one of Wall Street's big bears, Michael Burry, is doing some buying today, supposedly in Adobe. So,
yep,
interesting enough.
That's very interesting. And you're right. I saw that. The Michael Burry stock tracker on Twitter was saying, yeah, Burry's buying Adobe here on a 40% drop from its high. Smart man, Michael Burry. As I've said in the past, sometimes I look at his trades and try to figure out what indeed he's trying to express. But that one, it seems pretty obvious that he just thinks that's overdone. And for the company that publishes PageMaker and a whole bunch of web publishing software, I think he's probably right. By the way, we did get, and we're going right to the VIX right now, folks, we did touch almost exactly the November 20th high for the VIX. The spot VIX on November 20 of 2025 was $28.27. Today we got up to 20, was it 28.15, Justin, something like that?
Mm-hmm.
Well, That's about as close as you can get. Like they say, horseshoes and hand grenades. In hand grenades, you don't need to be nearly as accurate, but in horseshoes, you do. And I'd say we got right there with that horseshoe. Let's dip a little deeper into prediction exchanges. And I thought this was really telling because for a long time, Jasmine Crockett down in Texas, who's running for a Senate seat that John Cornyn, I think, is the Republican, but she was trying to be the Democrat. And apparently she's just really been exposed in the last few days, Justin, because her likelihood of being the Democratic nominee is down substantially. In fact, right now, the odds of her losing the Democratic primary, which is upcoming, is 85%. 85%. So they're saying she's toast in Texas, which is probably a good thing because I don't think this is a particularly bright lady based on what she's been saying, in particular, as of late.
Yeah, that's really, really interesting. I have not been super clued in on what's going on in that particular Senate race, but it is so cool that you can just see in real time the actual sentiment. Something that I think we learned over the last couple of elections is that these prediction markets tend to maybe be a better barometer for people of what people really think than some of the polling. So I think that's really, really incredible.
Because again, think, Justin, of how many times you've been asked, would you be willing to take a poll? Doesn't happen all that often for me, but it does often enough. And I always say, are you going to pay me for it? And they're like, no. And I'm like, well, then click. Why would anybody waste their time with a poll? On the other hand, when you've got tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands, even millions being put into a prediction exchange, as we talked about yesterday with, I predict that Khomeini won't make it past the 28th of February, you can make a lot of money on those kind of bets. And it's a lot more satisfying than talking to a pollster, I guarantee. All right, let's dive into stocks. Let's hit Ziff Davis because the stock was up almost 60% at one point today. They're going to sell a connectivity division, Justin, for about $1.2 billion. And that strategic shakeup is definitely not something that the bears in Ziff Davis or ZD are happy about, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the CEO is basically saying, hey, we built it. Now let's let someone else babysit it, right? And it's $1.2 billion. Obviously, it's going to help a lot for Ziff Davis, which let's just check out what the market cap is over there. Market cap of that stock is $2.35 billion. So yeah, they're up 73.05%. Well-deserved upside there.
Yep. And just as Justin said, folks, if you pull up the short interest, I guarantee there's a lot of pain in the shorts of that one. All right, Plug Power. Now, I know it's a single-digit stock, Justin, and I know that it's making a big move today. It was 5%, then 10%, then 15%, then 20% to the upside. An earnings beat is something that obviously every CFO love to tout because when they get those earnings beats, it really kind of says, well, your strategy's working. And that earnings beat was for the fourth quarter. It was up 13% year over year, revenue growth. That's a sign that you're winning, I'd say. And that's why, even though it's a single-digit stock, it made our hit parade today.
Yeah, and very well said. You know what I love about Plug is that you usually see people trying to jump in and trade it with the UOA. We didn't have UOA ahead of this particular earnings, but we did have, and I don't know if I'm really supposed to say this, but I think it's okay. We did have some follow-up UOA earlier this morning in Plug, stock at 208. They're just trying to look for a little bit of extra upside, and I just love how cheap these options are, even when the stock is making those big moves. Stock is up even more since they were picking that up from what I can see here. So love to see that they think that move can continue, and I would tend to agree.
Well, tell me if you think this one, which already halved its big upside move, Best Buy, it was up 10% early on, but it is hard to hold on to a gain, I agree, without something like what you already described in Ziff Davis, where you're selling a division for $1 billion plus. In the case of Best Buy, the stock rebounded from, as you can see, folks, a pretty bad February where it was just trending lower and lower and lower. And They both sell domestically and internationally, Best Buy does. And apparently, the numbers were good enough that even against an 850-point sell-off, which is where we are now in the Dow, these guys still holding on to almost 7% gain.
Yeah, it was interesting. The headlines looked like they said that the sales technically disappointed in some way, but that's not what I'm saying. I think the revenue probably was a little bit shy, but yeah, when they're showing that they're beating profit 261 to 247, that's a pretty nice beat for just a beaten down name like that. Something that is just really not doing well lately, and brick and mortar as a whole, I think, has just been kind of getting spanked quite a bit lately. So it's good to see that at least one of these guys are coming out there and posting a nice little gain. And I don't know what the short interest is in Best Buy, but I remember there was a time where this was one of those names that was surprisingly highly shorted. Maybe it's not now, but I can.
Well, they've approved, the board did, a 1% increase in the quarterly dividend. Their margins are not that spectacular, folks. When you really dive into it. But this is not new news. I'm not breaking some new news here. But if you're doing, for instance, $41 billion, basically that's what they project to earn in this upcoming quarter. Well, 41 billion, but net income for the quarter is usually around 5 to 600 million. That's like 1%. That's like what a grocery store does. So obviously these guys get hurt by the likes of Amazon and other online retailers. Even though Best Buy has joined that club years ago, it's still something that those are really thin margins, which is why whenever you go in there, I'm sure you're the same, Justin. You go in to get a peripheral of some sort, a mouse, whatever. They want you to join their total care, I think they call it, or something like that, because those kinds of things can drop money right to the bottom line, whereas the competition selling an LG or Samsung large screen TV has crushed the margins down to virtually nothing. So they need to sell all those ancillary things around it.
Exactly. And you know what they don't realize, I think, at the top is that getting asked about 55 different add-ons is exactly why I don't go into the goddamn store. The only other thing is Amazon, you're talking about comparing to Amazon. You're exactly right. And the funny thing is Best Buy doesn't have nearly as many levers. Obviously, we know that Amazon is so big, but just a quick button of this other headline that I'm seeing about Amazon today is that they're offering technology or exploring technology to help apps and sites sell ads inside of AI chatbots. So a little bit more of a clever way for them to start pairing in those add-ons. And I have to imagine they're probably just going to keep eating Best Buy's lunch. So to answer the question that you asked me at the beginning of this, you said, hey, do you think this move continues to the upside in Best Buy? Maybe, but I probably wouldn't play it.
Yeah. I mean, it can be a product that you really like, folks, but it doesn't mean you should own it. And this next stock, I think, is all about that. ONON. What is it? Well, sometimes they call it On Holdings, other times On Running, and so forth. They make a very popular sneaker. It's allegedly Swiss made as well. And I have them. I love them. Roger Federer, when he was offered, I think, 20 million bucks or something like that over at Nike, refused to put his name and his money on that. Instead, he came in on this one as they were just getting started, and he has crushed it. But even though, as I say, very popular, I love the product, doesn't mean I buy the stock. Maybe on a dip like today I should, but other than that, I don't really buy this one because, again, we just spoke about how competitive large screen TVs and peripherals are. Well, even shoes for running and tennis and all the rest are just as competitive. And man, there's not a lot of edge in there.
Yeah, exactly. I completely agree. And if anything, when you really, really love a product and you say, wow, this was a great deal, I got it for a nice price, and it's so well made, it's so comfortable, probably is a sign, hey, maybe this isn't going to be that profitable of a business. They probably care too much about their consumer. So I completely agree. Yeah, it looks like it was a tough quarter, but hopefully they just stay prioritizing the consumer and win that way.
Yep. I mean, again, they can make a great product, folks. Doesn't mean they're a great investment. It was a great investment when it was much cheaper. It has exploded to the upside, and just take a look at some of its competitors, and then you kind of realize this is a commodity market. Even though people love Hoka's, even though people love Nike and Adidas and all the rest, got to separate yourself from the love of the product and the love of the stock. Doesn't mean I won't buy it, though, if it keeps dipping. Let's dive into sports. Pete's doing something again today with sports. I don't know where, but somewhere. And we thought you guys might enjoy this one, which is Colin Cowherd, I think his name is. He calls it the herd, and he is talking about one of the problems for the Minnesota Vikings, which is up until now anyway, they've been a horrible judge of talent, actually, and their GM got fired for it. But is J.J. McCarthy going to still be there? Let's take a listen to Colin and see how he responds.
What's happening right now with the Minnesota Vikings? Reportedly, they want Tua. What's happening? What's happening is the J.J. McCarthy thing, it's not working. Boy, you got to make a decision quick. First of all, he can't stay healthy. He's missed 24 starts. So he may not be built for this league. The second thing is sometimes he is on fire, and other times he looks lost, and you can see both in an hour. And the numbers don't lie on J.J. McCarthy. Completion percentage, passer rating was the worst in the league. That is with Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison. It is a skill to acknowledge mistakes. What is...
Well, I tell you, Justin, this would be a huge mistake. Not necessarily to get rid of, sadly, J.J. McCarthy, but he identified how many games he's missed, 24 games in his couple years in the league. Tua has to be right up there because Tua has numerous concussions and other injuries that have kept him off the playing field. Do you really want to trade, for instance, a guy that you thought had a lot of talent, and I still think he does. I think he needs a better offensive line. But do you want to get rid of him for a guy that's got multiple concussions and is going to be in concussion protocol tents a lot, even if it's not a concussion? Because whenever he looks like, he's shaking something off on the field, they're going to say, okay, you're going to the tent. What do you think? Would you get rid of JJ and go after Tua?
No, I think that you said it best. And, it reminds me of something that Pete was talking about before when I was on here, talking about how quickly teams are to shuffle around their coaches and to just try somebody. Oh, that didn't work. Let's go to another person. And it's like, what happened to just believing in the people that you picked the first time?
Yeah, well, and I think they should. I think it's going to be an exciting time, perhaps, for the Vikings when they name a new GM. Maybe his last name will end in Najarian, but also I think they really need to focus on the offensive line to protect that quarterback. And Pete's been all over that. He's also been all over the idea that on defense they need a big thumper in the middle, either a massive defensive tackle and or combination of defensive tackle and linebacker, because their linebackers are pretty damn light. I mean, when I played, granted, I was no star. I'm not trying to put, any honors on me. I played 4 games, folks, but I was 245 pounds. Mike Singletary was 242 pounds. We were both fairly large men. If you're trying to play in this league, I understand you have to be fast, but if you're trying to play at 215, 220 pounds against the offensive lines and running backs that the other teams are stacking up against you, you're not going to see a lot of those teams win a lot of games. When they had a great quarterback who they got rid of, Sam Darnold, they won 14 games. But that's because Darnold could light it up, and he put up phenomenal numbers. The Vikings defense has turned a little softer, And with the offensive line letting people hit their quarterback every single play, I think it's not a great place for the Vikings to be considering something like a smaller quarterback, because JJ is a fairly big guy. Tua is not a very big guy, and he's going to get crushed if they don't get some help around him. All right, I got another one. Go ahead. You look like you
I was
wanted
just
to
going to say, and you were just saying too about the amount of games that Tua had missed. I pulled it up real quick as we were talking. It is a little over 20 as well, so not that far off from JJ, if that's going to be the comparison they're using.
Yeah, well, let's talk about A.J. Brown, because this guy is a beast, a fabulous receiver. But, and this is something that has hurt a lot of players, it'll even hurt high performers at companies. If you don't get along with the CEO, if you don't get along with the coach, or the coach doesn't really like you, and that seems to be the case with A.J. Brown and the Philadelphia Eagles head coach Sirianni. He had a solid year, but it was a down year this last year. I think if he had a regular A.J. Brown year, which he has done, for multiple times, I think maybe the coach wouldn't be on his case as much. But simply put, he was 19th in the NFL for receiving. For receiving yards, he was also 19th. 7 touchdowns, that's 15th in the NFL. And the best thing I can say about him is, he gets almost 13 yards per reception and 121 targets. But out of the 121 targets, 78 receptions, that means some of those balls were either A, not caught by him, or B, they missed him. But that is not a great stat either. So would you say, Justin, that he is going to stay, or is he going to go in Philadelphia?
Just going to throw it out there. So the odds say there's a 64% chance that he's going to stay. I feel like that presents decent odds to take the other side, right? Maybe that he'll go to some other team. And if you could be right about what team that is, then there's even more money in the pot for you to throw out some of those odds just for fun. Plus 275 on the Patriots. They are the leading team that people maybe expect he would go to, if not staying with the Eagles, just because they maybe need that WR real bad.
Well, A.J. Brown's 28 years old, folks. I will say that is still young enough that he could go back to his old production, which is what, of course, the coach was trying to shame him into throughout the season, especially at the second half, where he would break and get into the open and then not hold on to the ball. And I don't know what the problem was there, if it was, the coach getting in his head or whatever, but I don't think his skills have diminished as a 28-year-old man. I think he could still be a great, great player. And maybe the kid from Starksville, Mississippi, will end up on the Patriots roster. And if he did, I think he'd catch more than 78 passes next year unless he got hurt. So just kind of my take on that. All right. Well, Justin, the market's trying to claw its way back yet again. It seems to be, something that's just in the cards right now. We were down as much as 1,140 points, I think, in the Dow. Right now, we're down 675. The S&P was down very hard. It's down 90 now. And the NASDAQ is down 1.33%. Heck, we go down 1.33% if somebody says that NVIDIA's earnings were only okay. So there's a war going on, folks, and we're only down 1.38% in the NASDAQ and 1.38% in the Dow. They're virtually locked at that 1.38 to the downside right now, but much off the bottom. All right, Justin, can't thank you enough. You always do a tremendous job. Folks, that gentleman not only did Trade Monster AI, which is a fabulous offering that he put together using, Laurentian theory about momentum. And people just love this product, folks. So if you wanted to know who's the guy that did it, that's the guy, OTM Call Options, or Justin. Justin, thanks for coming on again. Great job, sir. And keep up the good work.
Thank you so much.